Welcome to British Audiophile, and that was Gary Clark Jr. with Bright Lights off his Black and Blue album. That's a really great album, well recorded, that highlights his talents as an artist and in particular a guitarist. He's really fast with that right hand. So this is going to be slightly different this episode in the sense that I'm going to talk about my CD collection, go through it, pick out certain CDs that are either really well recorded or that I particularly enjoy listening to. And that comes off some of the feedback that I've got, in particular to one subscriber, you know who you are, who suggested, what music would you suggest to kind of showcase and pick out for audiophile grade recordings. And it got me thinking I should perhaps do a video. As audiophiles we talk an awful lot about the gear, but at the heart of all of this is really the music. So I'm going to go through a bunch of my CDs. Now, before I go through that, I should point out that I have years past got rid of, this is going to be sacrilege to some people out there, got rid of the cases and put them all in these kind of binders. Still kept the cover art and the CDs, of course, but got rid of the cases. It just took up too much space. So forgive me for the purists out there. God, what's he done? It's just a convenient way for me to basically go through my CD collection and pick out. They're all sorted by genre. There's a separate kind of case for each different genre. And I found that a very convenient way of sifting through and just going through CDs when I wanted to listen. It's all been transferred onto a hard disk now, so I predominantly use that to listen. This is just kind of like an archive that I keep as a backup. I still think it's really beneficial to have physical media, so if I really like an album, I'll generally still tend to buy it on CD and then record it onto my hard drive. I still think that sounds a little bit better than streaming off Tidal, and I've got the hardware there in the background just in case later on they don't become available for whatever reason. So I'm going to go through my CD collection. Start off with the first one here. I do listen to quite a bit of Indian classical music. That's kind of tabla, sitar, bamboo flute, for those people who may not be familiar. I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through this. I'm going to perhaps pick out one album for anyone who might be interested in getting started. The nice thing about this is it's generally well recorded, the classical stuff, and it's proper instruments played live, so it's quite a good way for audiophiles of judging. Tabla is the fastest percussion instrument there is, so this one, Written on the Wind, is a particularly good one. It's got the bamboo flute from Hariprasad Chaurasia, and Zakir Hussain is probably the world's leading, he is the world's leading tabla player, is on there as well. And for those of you who may be interested in a little bit of Indian classical music, that's perhaps a good place to start. So that's one album. I don't think there's much point in going through many of the others, so I'll move on to what else I have. So what do we have here? We have a bit of classical. Andrea Bocelli. That's a great piece of opera. His vocals are just phenomenal. It's well recorded. I wouldn't say it's audiophile standard recording, but it's a very good recording, and his voice is just amazing. If you want to just see what your system is capable of producing in terms of male vocals, that's something that's highly recommended. Andrea Bocelli. What have I got? Lady Blacksmith Mandabazo. Aha. Ernest Ranglin, Below the Baseline. That is a killer audiophile album. If you haven't got it and you're interested in a little bit of kind of reggae come jazz fusion, that is a seminal piece of work. Every single track on it is beautifully recorded, and he's a virtuoso guitar player. It's got some really good electric bass as well, which is a real good workout for your system. Thoroughly recommend getting that. These are all kind of CDs as opposed to SACDs. So Kenny Davern, that's another really well recorded album. So that is, what's it called? Mood Indigo. Listening to saxophones, that's well recorded. I would say that's pretty much up there in terms of audiophile grade recordings as well. So what else have we got? Fiddler on the Roof, that's kind of takes me back to my childhood, some kind of Christmas albums. A bit of swing from Bing Crosby, Frank Sinatra. For those of you who are interested, I particularly like this, the first volume I should say, of Capitol Records for Dean Martin. It's well recorded, not audiophile grade, but good recordings. For those of you who like a little bit of chilled out swing, that is certainly worth considering. Another favourite of mine, Perry Como. Again, well recorded, perhaps not audiophile grade recording. Male vocals in terms of showing off what they can do and what your system can produce. He's got just a sublime voice, really smooth, really powerful. Worth checking out that one. As you'll probably find out, there's my music tastes are extremely diverse and varied. Nat King Cole, Louis Armstrong, Ella Fitzgerald, Cole Porter Songbook. Now, probably a good recording rather than audiophile grade recording, but she is perhaps arguably the finest jazz singer of all time. And again, that's an album, the Cole Porter Songbook by Ella Fitzgerald, that's worth checking out. Well recorded, like I say. So what else is here? Another diva of note is Dinah Washington. There's a couple of tracks on there. This is Mad About the Boy, and she has a fantastic voice, really soulful, and this is essentially a greatest hits. There's a couple of tracks on there that are just killer. Good quality recording, perhaps not audiophile grade. Greatest divas, Johnny Mathis. What have we got here? Neil Diamond. I love a bit of cheese, so I've got Neil Diamond, Barbara Streisand. Again, well recorded, but not audiophile. Some of you may laugh, but Kenny Rogers, a little bit of nice cheesy country there. I love that album. Picked a fine time to leave me, Lucille. It's good fun. Now, if you're going to have Michael Bublé, this is the album to get. I think it's called, what is it called here? It's Time. Audiophile grade recording, superbly recorded. He's in extremely good voice, as he always is generally, and there's some killer tracks on here. Feeling Good, Foggy Day. What else have we got? Try a Little Tenderness. Yeah, that is Bublé fans out there. I'm sure you probably already got that, but that is well recorded. I'd say audiophile grade recording and a good album. Got some other Bublé. Another audiophile grade recording from another jazz singer of note, Gregory Porter, Liquid Spirit. Again, worth looking at. Like I say, audiophile standard recording. Good test for your system in terms of what male vocals can produce. So that's that one. Where have we got to? Okay, these are the female kind of divas and singers. A bit of Clannad. I like a little bit of Mary Black, and for me, again, she's got a phenomenal voice. It's pretty much stripped back down to just her vocals on most of these tracks. That's The Holy Ground by Mary Black. Killer album. Perhaps not audiophile standard recording, but certainly a good recording. Worth checking out for female vocals, and I think that's predominantly what I've got in this sleeve. Some other Mary Black albums. That's her sister Frances, of course. Carpenters, again, good quality recording, not perhaps audiophile, but she's got a phenomenal voice. Karen Carpenter, or she did have, bless her. So perhaps another album that most people may have. Eva Cassidy, Songbird, she has an amazing voice, and this is an excellent recording. Perhaps not quite audiophile, but her vocals are just really well captured on this recording, and there's some killer tracks on there if you want to really showcase, well, find out really what your system is capable of producing in terms of reproducing female vocals. Anything by Jennifer Warnes is, you know, reputed to be excellent in terms of its recording. Again, phenomenal singer. This album, cracking audiophile standard recordings, just superb in terms of showcasing her talent and her voice. But other albums by Jennifer Warnes, and that's, I think, pretty much well known in audiophile circles as being kind of one of the benchmarks in terms of judging female recordings. Got Tracy Chapman, Crossroads, again, that's a good recording. Beverly Craven, Sarah McLachlan's one of my favourite tracks in terms of, it's not audiophile, but it's good. Angel, which is off that film City of Angels, just a hauntingly beautiful track. Just love that track of this album. So good recording, not audiophile standard. Mark Cohen, very good recordings. These are male vocalists, and both his albums are good. The Rainy Season and the first one, which was just his name, Mark Cohen, but that I would say is pretty much up there, close to audiophile standards in terms of recording quality. When I say audiophile standards, I'm saying something that's really kind of a, the best of the best, really. That's what I'm referring to. Inni Kamosi, Anthony and the Crying Light. Now, there's a track on here, I can't remember which one it is. Let's see if it's got anything in here that I can, anything with throwing all the back cover off, as you sometimes lose the track selections on there. But Anthony and the Johnsons, I fold that back up the right way. The Crying Light. He has a harrowing voice, and that's an excellent recording. Good test out for your system. So it is a harrowing track, and I can't remember the name of it. I'll have to maybe put it in the description. Joan Osborne. So these are getting a little bit more kind of edgy. That is, I would say, up there again with audiophile standards in terms of recording quality. There's a couple of tracks on there that are phenomenal. My favourite is The Man with the Long Black Coat. So worth noting. I know there's a few on here, but it's worth looking at. Celine Dion, she has a great voice. Norah Jones, again, is known, anything from Norah Jones is known in audiophile circles and gets regularly played at shows as audiophile standard recordings. They are phenomenal recordings. They're available in SACD and high-res formats as well, but both are up. I've got two of her albums here, and they're both excellent in terms of recording quality. Some good tracks on there. Amy Winehouse, recording quality is average, obviously great singer. Joss Stone, same. Sade, good quality recordings. It's her greatest hits. I think she's got a phenomenal soulful voice. Again, I'm kind of, as you probably pick out, I like my female singers. So, and I've got some of the kind of more widely known artists here. Mariah Carey, Alita Adams, not a great recording, but she's got a phenomenal voice. Regina Bell, a couple of things from En Vogue, Karen White, Alicia Keys, songs in A minor. Again, that's getting up there in terms of recording quality. There's some killer tracks on that album worth checking out. There's one actually with a bass line which is just phenomenal. Let's see if I can get it on here. What is that called? Rock With You. That has, in terms of producing low end, if you want to see how low your system goes, that Rock With You album for Alicia Keys is worth checking out. Mary J. Blige, Jennifer Hudson, great vocalists. Recording quality is okay. Bit of Justin Timberlake and Jamiroquai and Adele. Again, great vocalist. Good quality recordings. Some Sam Smith, some Mark Ronson. So, a few more to get through, so let's have a look and see what we've got here. Okay, so these are Elvis, the Essential Collection, good quality recordings from The King. I like that one. I wouldn't say perhaps audiophile standards, but not far off. Roy Orbison, this is an audiophile standard recording. The Great O, the Big O, I think he was called. That's with the, what is that, Royal Philharmonic Orchestra. And very well recorded. Good workout for you guys who like your classic old school rock. Tom Jones, Beatles, Rolling Stones, Monkees, I like the Monkees, Johnny Cash live at San Quentin, Janis Joplin, these are all okay. Joni Mitchell, Blue, that's a really good recording. A little bit kind of not depressing, I'd say, a bit very blue in terms of its tone and general mood of that album, but very well recorded. Jimi Hendrix, not great, that recording. Bob Dylan, greatest hits. James Taylor, greatest hits, they're recorded well. This is audiophile standards from Neil Young. Obviously he's well known in audiophile circles as well, but Harvest, killer album, excellent recording, audiophile standards. It's just taking a little longer than I thought. There's more on here than I envisaged. Cat Stevens, Don McLean, again good recordings. Paul Simon, good recordings. Bob Marley, his greatest hits, Legend. That again I think is up there with audiophile standards in terms of recordings for reggae from the great Bob Marley. David Bowie, very disappointing in terms of the quality of that recording. Lou Reed Transformer likewise. Elton John, but greatest hits of Santana. Anything from Dire Straits generally tends to be particularly well recorded. I've got a couple of things. I've got Money for Nothing, I've got Brothers in Arms, I've got pretty much a lot of Dire Straits. Again, an audiophile classic. This is actually probably better than some of the high-res stuff that I've got. In fact, it is better than the high-res stuff I've got. This is a CD of Hell Freezes Over. Superbly recorded. Their greatest hits. For anybody who's interested in the Eagles, they should certainly check out that album. Steely Dan, anything from Steely Dan's usually very well recorded. My wife loves that. Donald Fagen's voice irritates the hell out of me, so I don't tend to listen to it very often. Led Zeppelin's greatest hits, disappointed with the recording quality of that actually. I'm a big Led Zepp fan. The Doors though, their greatest hits recorded much better. And again, Jim Morrison, legendary artist, worth looking at. Pink Floyd's general recordings, people rave about them. I don't think they're amazing. I think they're good. I don't think they're quite audiophile standards. I think they're up there, but they're, I think Dire Straits stuff tends to be recorded better. I've got The Wall, I've got their greatest hits, Echoes. JJ Cale, I love this album. He was not so well known, but he's certainly a very influential figure in rock circles in terms of guitarists. Eric Clapton takes inspiration from them, done tribute albums about this guy. Wonderful album, well recorded, perhaps not quite up to the highest audiophile standards, but certainly worth checking out. Rebel by John Miles, there's a couple of great tracks on there. Joe Cocker, Eric Clapton, Cream. Again, the great Eric Clapton. If you want to get into him and look at his greatest hits, this is worth checking out. I'm sure there's Clapton fans out there, and I really kind of encourage you guys, if you've kind of got albums that you think are good quality or just great albums to listen to, just share in the comments block below. That's one of the great things about doing this channel, is the interactions that I get to have with you guys. So this is more kind of pop, Meatloaf, Billy Idol, Prince. Again, this I think is an audiophile standard recording. Tina Turner, and that is from Foreign Affair, the album. The Greatest Hits wasn't recorded as well, but this Foreign Affair album is recorded superbly well. Some killer tracks on there, worth checking out. We're up to about 20 minutes, so it's going to take a little bit longer than I envisaged, but I think I'll carry on. Got 2 or 3 more to go through. Madonna, Pretenders, Kate Bush. Greatest Hits, the whole story. Again, that's up there in terms of recording quality. I've got Chris Rea, good recording, not great, of his greatest hits. The Road to Hell though is recorded very well, so that's killer track. Robert Palmer, Sting, anything from Sting is going to be recorded excellently well. I think that's generally the reputation, and certainly the best of Sting recorded very well. Disappointed with the recording quality of the Boss's greatest hits. That wasn't quite up there, but this album by the Boss, Bruce Springsteen, that's got a couple of killer tracks on there. the title track, The Ghost of Tom Joad, the harmonica is just phenomenal when it comes in, worth checking out. Again, Bruce Springsteen, Paul Weller. Disappointed with Paul Weller's recordings. Def Leppard, not recorded great. Nevermind by Nirvana, that's up there. It's really good quality recording. And obviously a classic album that perhaps all Nirvana fans have got. Red Hot Chili Peppers, that was disappointing in terms of recording quality. This is an audiophile classic. I used to do the rounds many years ago. Rage Against the Machine. If you want to rock out and see how fast your system is, that is a benchmark recording. The Killing in the Name Of, and there's a couple of other tracks on there. Wake Up, well worth checking out. I am not a big hard rock fan, but they just knock it out of the park, and it's recorded fabulously. Bryan Adams is okay. Garth Brooks, Alanis Morissette, Tori Amos, Under the Pink, that's recorded really well. Again, up there with audiophile standard recordings, good quality recording. U2's disappointed with their greatest hits. Not the biggest YouTube fan, but I got their greatest hits and I didn't think it was recorded particularly well. David Gray, White Ladder, most certainly is recorded very well, and that's a killer album. Got some getting a bit more modern. As you can see, most of my stuff isn't that modern. Most of the people I listen to have passed on to the other plane. Although these guys haven't, I should say. That's Blur, greatest hits. The Verve, killer album. Recording quality is okay. The Verve is a great album though. Stereophonics, greatest hits, again, recording quality is okay. Met Kelly Jones a couple of times in my previous life, and he's a gentleman, one of the favourite celebs I did meet. Coldplay stuff's, it's out there, it's well recorded. Not quite maybe audiophile great, but well recorded. Keen, that's again well recorded. Snow Patrol, Final Straw, well recorded. Killers, well recorded. Scissor Sister, Mumford & Sons, that's these are all well recorded. Well, Lana Ray, what's her name? Lana Del Rey, yes, that's it. They're all well recorded, perhaps not quite audiophile great standards, but well recorded. Right, I'm getting there. Thanks for bearing with me. Blues. Right, people ask me about the blues, so I've got some more. This is seminal. There are some blues albums that any blues fan has to have, and this is one of them. Live at the Regal. It's well recorded. I mean, it's an old recording, recorded live, so there's limitations, but you can hear the venue. I certainly get a lot of an enjoyment out of it. It's a good recording, but wow, B.B. King on that particular night, absolutely amazing. It's just the sheer emotion and energy that these guys have. I love blues. This again, John Lee Hooker, I think is at his best. I'm not sure if it's available, Tantalizing the Blue, but it's again, you feel like you're in New Orleans in some underground kind of bar with sawdust on the floor. And Tantalizing the Blues, I'm Just a Drifter, Kick It Before You Fix It. There's a tribute to Jimi Hendrix on there, and the musicians are so tight. It's just a phenomenal recording. That's those two, that and B.B. King, probably amongst my favourites. John Lee Hooker, well recorded. One of my wife's favourite, The Healer. It's up there with audiophile standard recordings. The Healer, worth checking out. There's a bunch of John Lee Hooker stuff in here. And Don't Look Back, another album up there with audiophile standard recordings. Some very much studio track produced, so different to the Tantalizing the Blues one that I spoke about earlier. Van Morrison, now he's got his greatest hits, they're okay, but the killer album, and it's a good recording, is from 1967 when he was basically trying to make it big. Just went over to the States from Ireland, and he met up with a very famous producer who I forget their name of, so couldn't be that famous. Well, just because I'm ignorant, I didn't forget his name. So that is a killer album. That's Brown Eyed Girl is on there, which is perhaps the track that people will recognise, but my favourite tracks are TB Sheets, Spanish Rose, Who Drove the Red Sports Car, Row Row Rosie. Just a killer track. TB Sheets is an 8 and 9 minute track that he wrote in tribute to a friend of his that was dying of TB and visiting her in hospital. The harmonica is piercing. It's just, you just feel the emotion, and his voice gets more emotional as he goes through it, and he broke down in tears, and you can actually hear just as he's breaking down in tears at the end of that track. It's just one of my favorite tracks of all time. There's a whole bunch of other stuff from Van Morrison that's well recorded. C6 Steve, again, good recording. There's a killer track on here called Ain't Nothing But the Blues from Boz Scaggs. Good recording, perhaps not audiophile standard, but certainly worth checking out. Stevie Ray Vaughan, Robert Cray, Commitments. We're up to 5 minutes. It's going to be a long video, guys. Sorry, try and get through this if I can. Next few got soul, and I think this is just the soul stuff. Ray Charles, I've got a bit of that. Aretha Franklin Sings the Blues, again, great album, perhaps not quite audiophile standards, but well recorded, I'd say. Nina Simone. Now, guys, if there's anyone knows of a Nina Simone album that's really well recorded, especially a live one, I'd like to have it. I don't know what to get, but I love Nina Simone. I've got a couple of her albums. Sam Cooke, Change Is Gonna Come, that's off his greatest hits. That's a killer track. Otis Redding, not particularly well recorded, but what a great artist. Gladys Knight, again, not very well recorded, great artist. Al Green, again, not particularly well recorded, great artist. James Brown, okay recorded. Temptations' greatest hits are reasonably well recorded. Marvin Gaye, Smokey Robinson, Benny King, Bill Withers, there's a couple of tracks on there that I really love. Stevie Wonder, now I've got a couple of his albums and they are quite well recorded. His greatest hits are quite recorded. Joe Tex, Curtis Mayfield live, Donna Summer Gold, that's well recorded. George Benson. Now if you're going to get Michael Jackson, I've got a whole load of Michael Jackson. Don't get the greatest hits, it's Pants, or try and see if you can get hold of one of the older CDs when Quincy Jones was still involved in producing it, because they're much better than the new ones that have been hacked to death, I should say. Michael McDonald, good quality recording, his greatest hits, worth checking out. And Barry White, disappointing killer album, well recorded, up there with audiophile standards. Lionel Richie from Can't Slow Down, that's got Hello, and every single track on there is phenomenal. His greatest hits are okay. Luther Vandross, greatest hits weren't recorded particularly well, but Dance With My Father is well recorded. Again, maybe not quite the best audiophile recording. James Taylor of Kool and the Gang, Alexander O'Neill, Cameo Word Up, great album. Cameo Word Up, good recordings. That's the guy who wear his codpiece outside his trousers famously on Top of the Pops. Chime, Sidney Youngblood, Bobby Brown, Omar, Chaka Khan, Alison Williams. None of these are particularly well recorded. Quincy Jones got his own album, anything from him is well recorded stuff. He was obviously he is a very famous music producer. Right, these some kind of compilations. Saturday Night Fever, I like a little bit of disco, and that's really well recorded. Saturday Night Fever, and some killer tracks on there. Now this, for those of you who like a little bit of, I suppose, what you call this, funk, soul funk, the Blaxploitation series, if you can get hold of it. There's some rare stuff on there, and there's a whole series of these. I think I've got a whole bunch, like 5 or 6 of these CDs. If you can get hold of these, check them out. They're well recorded, well produced, and some just killer tracks, some kind of more funky kind of underground type soul stuff going on there. Some other compilations, none of these are probably that great. The one that I would say, that a couple of here that are good, is the Buddha Bar. Now that's kind of like a world fusion kind of electronic music from the famous club in Paris, when now there's Buddha bars perhaps everywhere, but it started off in Paris, DJ Ravin, and there's kind of take a whole bunch of music from around the world, fuse it together, and normally when that happens the results aren't very good, but this Buddha bar series is very good. Again, up there in terms of recording quality is Nitin Sawhney, Beyond Skin, and I think I've got the other one, which is Prophecy. So that's again kind of that kind of world kind of music fusion stuff, but that's up there in terms of recording quality. Dimitri from Paris, Gesto Funk, if you like a little bit of electronic music there. Track Fluid is really good, check that out. Blue Funk, there's a bit of acid jazz in here, they're not particularly great in recording, but Faithless, their greatest hits, is extremely well recorded, and again, for those of you who are into that kind of music, I'd suggest checking out their CD, well recorded. A bit of NWA, Eminem. I think that kind of covers it all. Have we got anything else? Yeah, no, that's the last one. The last thing I'll do, there's a few CDs that are really worth mentioning that are up there in terms of just either exceptional CDs. These I haven't put in there because I bought these more recently. If you want to try out, if you've got a Blu-ray player that will play SA CDs, obviously this is quite accessible in terms of a lot of SA CDs cost a lot of money, but this was I think a tenner, and that's Dire Straits, Brothers in Arms, excellent recording. For those of you like your kind of, I think it's called swamp rock, but this is a killer album for kind of like a bluesy rock, and from the late Tony Joe White, really famous in terms, well, really well respected, I should say, not famous in terms of a songwriter, but there's some really great tracks on here. Excellent recording, audiophile standards. Ray Charles with Genius Loves Company, again, killer tracks, audiophile standard, great recordings. Seminal blues album. Anybody worth their salt who cares about the blues should have this album. Well recorded, perhaps not quite the greatest audiophile standards, but not far off, but a killer album. Carrie Bell, harp slinger, his harmonica playing and his voice just outstanding. Muddy Waters, I'm a fan of Muddy Waters and blues in general. That is the famous audiophile quality recording, I think from probably the 50s, I think, but it's just amazingly recorded. It's kind of stripped back, it's just him, you see on the back, with a few players again to test out the quality of your system in terms of producing male vocals. Legendary folk singer album worth checking out if you want something a little bit more raw and ready, well recorded, perhaps not to that audiophile standard, but this Muddy Waters Live, and what's that say? It's the legacy edition of Muddy Mississippi Waters Live, so from Epic. So I'll stick that there, hopefully you can see what that is. That's again him, rough and ready, playing live. It's one of the greatest blues performers live of all time, worth checking out. These are seminal. I like my jazz kind of a bit more chilled out, so and my classical, so I don't like the big band stuff. My dad was a big fan of that. I like the kind of the trios, quartets, quintets. Now this from Dave Brubeck is audiophile standard recording, excellent tracks, some tracks perhaps even that you probably don't know that you know will be on there. Take Five's very famous, but there's some killer tracks on there. Excellent album, wonderfully recorded. Perhaps the, probably not perhaps, it is the most famous and most important blues album of all time. Miles Davis kind of blue. It's not just Miles Davis, Bill Evans, Cannonball Adderley, John Coltrane are all on there. 5 tracks, all of them amazing, well recorded. Have to have that if you're interested in the blues. Oscar Peterson, one again the greatest blues pianists of all time. That the definitive Oscar Peterson, well recorded audiophile standards, I think. Some killer tracks in there. Again, I think perhaps a must-have for blues fans. There's a couple of things now. That's kind of my CD collection. It's not all of it, but pulled out a fair chunk of it there. Half of my other music is on hard drive. It's high-res stuff that obviously I haven't got on CDs. So I pulled off just a few on there that I think for classical and jazz people who are trying to get into that kind of music. London Philharmonic Orchestra, 50 greatest pieces of classical music. I'll put this in the description. That is worth checking out if you're trying to get into classical. It's a well-recorded audiophile standard. There's 50 pieces on there of well-known stuff and stuff perhaps that you may not know quite so well if you're not a big classical fan, but that's a good introduction into classical music. Mari Kodama, again I'll put her name in the description notes. Beethoven's Piano Sonatas. It's just her playing a piano. Now piano is one of those things that's really difficult for a system to produce. So if you want to test your system out, then this is a good test, but it's just beautiful the way it's just so delicate and so, almost brings tears to your eyes when you listen to those recordings. If you're getting into blues, the ones that I mentioned there, those CDs are very important. There's 2 or 3 others that I think are must-haves. Bill Evans' Trio, Portrait in Jazz. Bill Evans, arguably the greatest jazz pianist of all time. Worth checking that out. Art Pepper meets the rhythm section. I'll put these in the notes. That's great. It's quite weird in terms of the way it's produced because he's a saxophonist and I think he's over on the left hand side, and so it's very extreme in terms of how things are imaged within the soundstage. But it's that makes it quite a good test to see how good your imaging is, and it's excellent. All of these are phenomenally audiophile standard recordings. Cannonball, Adderley and Bill Evans. Know What I Mean, again I'll put that in the description notes. Cannonball Adderley, famous saxophonist, he's there with Bill Evans. Killer album, great tracks. All of these ones, like I mentioned on this list here, and they I think are must-haves in people's collection. So this has taken 37 minutes. Sorry, I apologize it's so long, but I think it was just I wanted to share with you what I have and what I listen to. It's quite diverse, as you say, and one of the great things about doing this channel is that I get a chance to opportunity to kind of interact with you. So big shout out to one of my subscribers who suggested I do this, and apologies, like I say, it's taken so long, but hopefully it's you've got something from it for those people who may be interested in getting into different types of music. So for today, for now, a British audiophile signing off.